Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 703, February the 24th, 2019, Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so last night, Saturday evening, we began getting these reports out of Venezuela that all hell is now breaking loose. Things have been bad there for a long time, but now we're talking all hell breaking loose, meaning that we now have the military firing on some protest groups. We're not sure if they're firing shots in the air, if they're firing at these people. We know that they attacked a group of people on the border with Brazil and some group of indigenous type people. They've been hospitalized. Some of them have died, I assumed, shot by Maduro's army. They have set, Venezuelan army has set ablaze 4 trucks that were bringing humanitarian aid. Of course, there has been severe shortages, food and medicine. There's been over 3.5 million people have fled Venezuela to primarily Brazil and Colombia. So there's a serious refugee issue going on as well. We know a lot of them people are heading this way. Anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 people a day are leaving Venezuela. It's just a mess. So there's a lot going on in Venezuela. And there's a lot of players involved. There's a lot of clandestine groups involved down there in Venezuela. You have American CIA is down there. Of course, the Chinese have their intelligence people there. The Russians have intelligence people there. You've got various support groups for the various factions. You have just a mishmash of all sorts of things going on simultaneously as this battle for power is taking place, with Maduro seems to still at this point have the majority of the military on his side, certainly the leadership, although there have been reports in recent days of defections by certain members. But these would be, lower ranking individuals pulling guard duty and things like that, standing at some outpost who decides to cross over into Colombia or something. But as far as the military leadership, it appears they're still with Maduro. We've also heard that there have been threats. Threats by, I don't know if it was Russia or I think it was Cuba, threats that if Maduro or any of his military leadership capitulate, that they will be killed by Cuban forces or Cuban intelligence or whatever. So apparently that's the case there. Maduro and the military leadership are not being able to walk away from the deal, because they could all walk away with boatloads of money and go live somewhere in a tropical paradise and never have to worry about it again. But apparently there's messages coming out of Cuba saying if you don't hang on and fight and stay in the fight, we're going to kill you or what have you. So there's a lot of different dynamics going on, playing out right now in Venezuela as we try to figure out what's going on here. Already you have had, we were the first to recognize, and then practically about 80% now of the United Nations countries have come out and supported this, forget his name now, Juan, what's his name? The guy opposing Maduro, who's essentially in his own mind the de facto president, but Maduro is still there. So we have 2 people really claiming to be the head of the country. This guy was holding big rallies on Saturday. So it's just a mess down in Venezuela. It's hard to know exactly what's going on, but it's definitely a power struggle, and it's not just the forces within Venezuela. It's the outside forces from all over applying lots of pressure. You can expect that there's lots of various intelligence operations going on down there. There's a lot of foreign aid that is parked in Brazil and Colombia trying to get food supplies in, and of course now we can see that those U.S. aid trucks and things like that are being set ablaze and turned over and destroyed and things and such. So it's a mess. I don't know how much longer that can go on, though, really, honestly. Maybe a couple more weeks, but I would think that we're getting pretty close to the end of this. Something's going to have to give one way or the other. I think at some point Maduro is going to have to go into complete, military lockdown. I mean, clear the streets, put out the military, shoot anyone who is on the streets. He's going to have to go hardcore to get a grip on the situation. And if he doesn't, he is going to lose control probably within the next few, I would think, possibly as little as days. maybe as much as weeks, but can't go on much longer than that. I'm not down there. You would actually have to be on the ground down there to really understand what's going on. Because again, whenever you have these types of things, you have a lot of intelligence operations going on, and that would include lots of propaganda and fake news and things like that, which is primarily designed, primarily the target would be, of course, the people in Venezuela. There's probably, Western intelligence assets down there trying to broadcast, take over radio stations, and try to broadcast that Maduro is gone, the government's gone, and maybe bring all the other people out on the streets and try to do a coup that way. That was done in Iran. It's been done other places. It's really hard to tell just what the hell's going on down there, but we know it's bad and getting worse by the day, and things are going to have to come to a head here very soon. So we'll continue to watch the story, and we'll see what's going on. It's so bad now that even Commie Bernie has had to come out and say that Maduro is not, doing things the right way. So he was all for Maduro up until a couple of days ago, and now even Commie Bernie realizes that the situation is not good, and he realizes that he's on the wrong side of the issue. And you'll see more of that as we move forward. And I think it's just a matter of time. Maduro, I think his days are numbered. And it's just a question of how ugly this is going to be before it finally, is over. So I feel bad for a lot of those people down in Venezuela. These are largely a lot of poor people without a lot of means. Unfortunately, a lot of these people, they voted for it. Just remember one thing about socialism. It's easy to vote in socialism. But at some point, you're going to have to shoot your way out. That's the problem with socialism. You can vote it in, but you're going to have to shoot your way out of it. And you will have to shoot your way out of it. Another textbook example. The fact that there are people anywhere in this world celebrating socialism, communism, or any of these other isms that are part of collectivism, with what we see going on, with what we know has happened in the past, it's mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. Well, we have Chief Spreading Bull, otherwise known as Elizabeth Warren, now suggesting that we need reparations for Native Americans. Native Americans. Well, okay. So she was suggesting being on board with reparations for blacks. Now she's including Native Americans. Since we're talking about Native Americans, who are the Native Americans? Well, most of the time, years ago, we just called them the Indians. And how did the Indians get here? Were they born here? Well, not according to anthropologists. According to anthropologists, 5,500 years ago, there was a land bridge from Alaska to the continental United States. You could walk on land from Alaska to the United States. And many of them did. And they came here and they settled in this continental United States and continued moving across the country for a period of about 5,000 years. And they became the Native Americans. That's right, the Indians originally were Eskimos. If you want to find real Native Americans, you might have to go back to prior to the last ice age, about 11,500 years ago, where we are pretty sure that there was some kind of modern type human running around, because we know that they were slaughtering large beasts with primitive weapons. They were the Native Americans, and they were all killed off at some point, unless you've seen a caveman walking around anywhere. Short of that, the Native Americans are actually Eskimos. Okay, let's move on. Well, the Ukrainian president, Petro Poroshenko, is praising Trump for being tough on Russia. And, of course, he's just happy that we sold them the anti-tank weapons that they're using against the Russians in eastern Ukraine. And we're also providing them with actual military aid, weapons, and things, as opposed to just blankets and food, which is what they were getting from Obama. Now, what's unusual and weird about all this is that it was Poroshenko, his government, people within his government that were actually there at the very onset, the very beginning, at the end of 2015, of peddling fake Trump Russia information into the DNC via this Chalupa woman, this DNC operative that was coming directly out of the government of the Ukraine of Poroshenko. He was hardcore anti-Trump, pro-Hillary. He was one of the, probably, of European leaders, he was one of the first to be actively working to stop Trump from being elected. And he was part and parcel of that entire process of funneling that garbage into the DNC, which later evolved into the Trump-Russia narrative. And Poroshenko and his government were directly involved in the very beginning stages of that narrative. And now he's praising Trump. Typical politician. Typical politician. Well, well, well. The Rotten Reverend. The Rotten Reverend has sent out a tweet stating, quote, Politico reports today that a wide-ranging disinformation campaign aimed at Democrat 2020 candidates is already underway on social media, with signs that foreign state actors are driving at least some of the activity. There you go. Well, the Rotten Reverend Clinton and the DNC and Politico are back at their old tricks with their massive conspiracy that they're laying out for 2020, just as they did in 2016. So what they've done is they've named 200 conservatives that they say should be banned from Facebook. So on one hand, they're saying that it's possibly these foreign Russian bots is what they're talking about. Russian bots, but the people on their target list are just YouTubers who are conservative. They're not Russian bots, they're actual real humans who have YouTube channels, like mine. I wonder if I'm on the list. We already know that they've been banning and demonetizing conservative YouTubers now for since at least back to 2016. We know that, and it's just getting worse and worse. The fact of the matter is, Democrats know that they cannot beat Trump fairly in 2020, and so they are looking at an angle right now. Hillary specifically is looking for an angle to jump into the race. Now, my guess is she's working behind the scenes to do everything she can to stop Biden from getting in the race. Because if Biden jumps in, Hillary probably will not be able to, because she's not going to challenge Biden for the top spot. And I don't think she could, and I don't think she wants to stand for the embarrassment. But the Rotten Reverend Clinton has every intention of being the Democratic nominee in 2020. The person that she has to contend with is Uncle Joe. She has to stop Uncle Joe somehow. But, hey, when she went to get her, wow, lightning. We just had a big lightning bolt out here. That's fine. Raining cats and dogs right now, and we got lightning. So, anyway, you know, when she sandbagged that Senate seat in New York, it was rumored that John F. Kennedy Jr. was going to be looking at running for that seat. But unfortunately, he was killed in an accident. A plane crash. So, hopefully, Uncle Joe doesn't drive a Mercedes 320e model like, what's his name, the Rolling Stone reporter. Hopefully, he's not going to be taking any plane flights anytime soon on any small aircraft. He might want to be careful about that, because the Rotten Reverend Clinton wants to run really, really bad. And she's already laying out the angle along with her friends at the DNC and Politico. Now, I think that the big donors, as I said last night, the big donors and the party, you know, people at the top of the DNC, they don't really want to see the Rotten Reverend Clinton back again. They don't think she can win, and they're right. And they're just done with her, pretty much. She causes them a lot of problems. And they don't really like her all that much anyway. What can she do for them now? Nothing. I think that they're also realizing, as we can see the attacks on Commie Bernie and Ocasio, Marty Feldmanized Cortez, we can see that they're starting to face the reality that 2020 is coming up on them, and they cannot go into that election looking like the commies, which they are. So they have to immediately make a move and dart to the center, and so they're going to be looking for a centrist type person. And I think that the person they're going to be looking at, in my opinion, is Eric Holder. I could be wrong, but that'd be my guess. If you look at the people who are out there, Eric Holder is probably the only one that can pass off as some kind of a centrist, even though he's a far left liberal himself. It's just that he's been smart enough to stay away from the far left narratives that the rest of all these people have jumped onto. And of course, he hasn't actually declared yet, so he's not having to take positions on things yet. He's kind of waiting it out. And the fact that he's waiting it out tells me that he must feel like he's going to be getting some big money support from somewhere. Otherwise, he would be like everyone else out of the starting gate trying to get that money. For some reason, he doesn't appear to be worried about where his money's going to come from. Generally, the first people out of the gate are the people who get the first crack at the money. So he doesn't appear to be worried. And that tells me something, because he's shown an interest in running. So if he is running and he hasn't gone out there and gone for the money yet, he must have some feeling of confidence that the money's going to be there for him when he does. And who controls that? Well, the big donors at the DNC and the corporate Democrats that really run that party at the corporate level for the DNC. And so they realize that people like Cortez and some of these other far lefties are not going to win and can't win and will lose badly against Trump. They know that they have to move to the center. And so this is the move that they're making now. And this rotten Reverend Clinton deal here with the DNC and Politico, this is just another attempt to shut down conservative speech because, of course, they're getting called out on all their communism and all their other wacky ideas. And this is a problem. So part of their strategy to win in 2020 is to shut down the opposition, which is what the rotten Reverend Clinton does. He shuts down the opposition. But they have other plans too, and we'll be getting to them as we move forward. Speaking of coming unhinged, I think the pressure is finally starting to get to Marty Feldman-ized Cortez. The crazy-eyed commie is coming unglued now because I think the pressure is starting to get to her. And she was giving a speech yesterday in New York, and she came a little bit unhinged and actually revealed her true feelings. Of course, we know she's a hardcore communist, is what she really is, trying to pretend she's a socialist. But she's actually a hardcore communist, my friends. Make no mistake about it. And she let that cat out of the bag in this speech the other day. She also went on this crazy ego trip and started screaming about, she's trying and everybody else is trying on this Green New Deal or whatever, the Communist Manifesto. And she ended by saying that she is the boss. She is the boss. Ugh. So she's freaking out. The pressure's getting to her. She's cracking. She was lecturing Americans yesterday on eating hamburgers, eating too many hamburgers. I don't know what she suggests we eat. I love hamburgers. I probably have hamburgers 2 to 3 times a week, especially in the summertime when it's grill time. Love to grill burgers. And so I don't know, maybe she wants us to all eat borscht. No thank you. Speaking of dirty, rotten scoundrels, CNN published on, I think it was Friday, maybe Saturday, but they published an op-ed, I think it was Friday, by a former Obama administration official named Josh Geitzer, Geitzer. The title of the article was, "What if Trump refuses to accept defeat in 2020?" What if Trump refuses to accept defeat in 2020? That's funny. Well, I got an idea. How about he calls Christopher Steele and hires him to write a phony dossier on the rotten Reverend Clinton, on his Demo-commie opponent, to challenge the election. That's what the rotten Reverend Clinton did, according to Steele. Didn't Steele just tell all of us in his deposition that he was hired to put together this dirt, this opposition research on Trump, so it could be used in case Trump won to challenge the results of the 2016 election? That's exactly what he said. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but I did read it here directly from his testimony. I could probably go find it again and read it back to you, but essentially that's exactly what he said. He was hired to put together the opposition research in the event that Trump won so that they could challenge the election. So, this guy's worried about Trump challenging the election. Why doesn't he go hire Christopher Steele to write a dossier on Hillary or one of her opponents, whoever the Democratic opponent is, who loses to him in 2020? And if they do rig the election against him, that way he'll have Christopher Steele's dossier, which he can use against the Democratic opponent who defeated him. Kind of funny, isn't it? But that's not going to happen, because there's no way the Democrats are going to win in 2020. Trump's going to be reelected. Now, they're going to throw everything they've got. They're going to try to rig the election every single way they can. There's nothing that they won't do. They will do everything they possibly can, legal, illegal, it doesn't really matter. Whatever it takes, they're going to try to rig the election. But this guy goes one step farther. He actually calls for, after 2020, if Trump loses, he calls for a military coup and civil war. He says that Congress, state governors, the military, and the Electoral College are 4 tools that would be used to stop Trump if he refuses to leave office in 2020. Keep in mind, this individual is a deep stater. He was in Obama's National Security Council under Susan Rice, where they were doing all those unmaskings. He spent his entire career in government or working for an advocacy, private, nonprofit, liberal advocacy group. But mostly he's been in the government and national security departments and things and such. He's a deep stater and probably might be responsible for some leaks, might be responsible for some other things, but I think the Secret Service or somebody, FBI, somebody may want to go have a conversation with him, because this article is dangerously close to being a big problem. Very big problem. So, yes, this is just this is all beginning right now. I mean, we're seeing all this happen right now in preparation for 2020. They are going to do everything they can. I mean, they tried in 2016 to cheat Bernie. That worked. They got away with that because Bernie's a pussy. But Trump is not. Trump is not. And so they failed to defeat Trump in 2016, and they will fail in 2020. But they're going to give it everything they got, by hook or crook, everything they can to stop Trump in 2020. But I just don't think it's going to be even that close. But I would not be the least bit surprised to see if in 2020 they try to run the same program. Trump won? Oh, then it must be rigged. Must have been the Russians, maybe the Chinese. Who knows? What kind of a deal did he cut with China? Oh, who knows? They're going to come up with some sort of narrative to explain why they got their ass kicked so bad in 2020, just like they did in 2016. They'll never admit, because they've become commies. And commies aren't popular in the country, unless you're in Cali or New York or somewhere like that. But the majority of the country is not commie country. Let's put it that way. So there you go. These are the types of things that we're going to be seeing. Expect to see a lot more of this type of stuff. It's a new, I don't know what the term is, what the word is, but I'll just say that I've seen a lot of highly heated, contested elections. I remember the Reagan election was very volatile. The Nixon years, him having to resign, that was volatile. The years under Carter were volatile in a different way. Of course, with Obama, Bush, and 9/11, and then of course Trump. It's just things are becoming more and more volatile in our system, and there's more and more meddling going on by deep state bureaucrats, by crooked politicians, by special interest, wealthy globalist people like that. A lot of things getting thrown into the mix into our elections, and it's starting to get very dangerous. It is starting to get very dangerous. But these people like this guy calling for a revolution, I mean, they ought to be very, very careful what they wish for. 87% of the counties in this country are red. Well, we talked the other day about this guy, John Fry, the IRS analyst, who is the one who turned over the bank records on Michael Cohen to the porn lawyer, Michael Avenatti. And now we have confirmed that, in fact, he is a far-left, Trump-hating commie who supports currently the skateboarder, Bobby O'Rourke, the Irish skateboarder. Bobby O'Rourke is who he likes. So there you go. That's pretty much was to be assumed anyway, but now we have confirmation. So, as I was telling you about a week or two ago, they are not going to allow Commie Bernie to catch him this time sleeping. And they're going to go after him very, very early on. You're going to see a lot of things coming out on Commie Bernie. I told you, I saw these things many years ago. I saw these things back in the 80s when all this was happening. I mean, everybody knows that Commie Bernie and his wife Jane honeymooned in the Soviet Union and came back and started talking about what a wonderful place it was. Just 3 years before it collapses because of the horrible, pitiful conditions, the collapse of the currency, the pure tyranny that was going on. Total hardcore police state. But Bernie and Jane thought it was fantastic. Loved them youth programs. Many other things. Him marching down the street with the commie flag, doing the commie chants and slogans. Lots of video of Bernie from back in the 70s, the 80s. Total hardcore pro-commie. Totally. Endorsing open, flat out, straight up communism. Not democratic socialism. Not a little left of the center. No. Hardcore communism and hardcore communist countries and hardcore communist leaders. Visiting them. Talking with them. Endorsing them. Supporting them. Marching with them. It's all on video. These videos were there 25 years ago. I remember watching them back in the late 80s. All that stuff's available. And the Rotten Reverend Clinton said on it, because they had a deal, the Sanders and Clinton campaign had a deal, that they would hold back the really nasty stuff they had on each other. But that deal's not out there anymore for Bernie. And I think they're going to try to take him out quick, if they can. But the problem is, 30-40% of the Democratic base now supports him. He's the front runner. And this type of stuff would make them cheer. You know, you're not going to drive them away by showing them Bernie going to the Soviet Union and praising the Russians. You're not going to drive them away by showing Bernie endorsing communists back in the 1980s. They'll cheer that. They'll think that's fantastic. You know, they'll be tweeting out the videos and looking for a lot of likes, a lot of retweets. That's the problem they have. That is the problem they have. But you're going to be seeing all this, and it's an effort by the Democratic big donors, the people who run the Democratic Party, to make sure that Bernie doesn't create the problem that he created last time. And I'm sure the Rotten Reverend Clinton, if she's planning on throwing her hat in the ring, and I think she wants to make sure that she doesn't get blindsided by Bernie again. She wants to cut him off at the knees before she enters the race, would be my guess. Or before they put anyone in the race, they want to blow up Bernie. And you can see that there's a lot of pushback on Ocasio-Cortez. The Washington Post just wrote a story on her on Friday saying that she's an economic illiterate. So clearly the heavyweights in the DNC realize that they can't get elected telling the truth about what they really believe. And these people aren't supposed to be doing that. And so the people who are doing that have to be neutralized, taken care of. And they have to throw someone in there like an Eric Holder who they can pawn off as a centrist, even though he's down with every bit of this. But he's not stupid enough to come out and say it. So this is the game that they're having to play now. They got to move to the center, and they got to move quick. And they've got to beat down the commies before they do any more damage. So we have video footage of Bernie and Jane praising the Soviet Union during the height of the Cold War, defending communist regimes all over Latin America, bashing America as a nation guilty of 150 years of imperialism. What? And that's mind-boggling. You're getting after the United States for imperialism, and there's some truth to that. But that's true of all large nations. They like to grab territory. What can you say? I'm not always supportive of that. Sometimes I'm okay with it, but it depends on the situation. Not really okay with the imperialism thing. But who was any more imperialist than the damn Soviets? And the Soviets didn't do it in a soft way. The Soviets just came in with the military and beat down your doors and took your country over. Deposed your dictator if they had to. Talk about, he's over there praising the Soviet Union. They were the biggest imperialist, hardcore imperialists on the planet. What a moron. We have Sanders' speech from 1985, which I remember very well. During the Sandinista Revolution, he was invited. The Sandinistas invited him to come down there and speak, and he did. That one made the highlight reels back in the 80s. It was a communist revolution. He went down there and spoke on behalf of the communist revolution leaders, who then came into power and destroyed Nicaragua. Maybe Bernie should pay reparations to Nicaragua. He praised Fidel Castro and the communist regime in Cuba. He advised Daniel Ortega, that regime, on how to fight the U.S. And of course, he told us about that little trip on his honeymoon with Jane to the Soviet Union, how impressed he was with the Soviet Union's youth programs and their chandeliers. Okay. Well, it looks like Kim Jong-un is headed to the summit. It looks like he's going by train. So I guess the summit is, Wednesday? So he's headed there now, and that's in Vietnam. So that's where Kim Jong-un is headed by train. Trump will be joining him there Wednesday, and hopefully they'll make some progress. We have Nazi Piglosi, Madame Botox, saying she's going to introduce a bill to force the president and vice president to release their tax returns, but not members of Congress. That bill is going nowhere. Nowhere. Like all our other bills, it's just another political stunt. That's all it is. Nothing, everything that comes out of Pelosi and the House Democrats from now until 2020 will be nothing more than political stunts. Uncle Bob the Executioner has released 800-page report on Manafort. The 800-page report will likely be making the case to put Manafort in jail for the rest of his life. And we have the New York, Southern District of New York, saying that if Trump attempts to pardon Manafort, and there's rumors that he might, that they will file charges on him, and therefore Trump couldn't do anything because these will not be federal charges. They'll be state charges. That might run into the double jeopardy rule. You cannot be tried for the same crime twice. So they will have to come up with new crimes. We'll see how that works out. Let's see. We now have CNN, the commie news network, the king of fake news by far, now blaming Jussie Smollett, the fearmonger, for blaming his drug problem for his behavior. Just as I told you. That's going to be his defense. He was on drugs. And finally, but we haven't talked about Europe in a couple of days. continues to stay in somewhere in the high teens approval rating. Last time I heard about 18% or 18%. But there's some things going on there now. We're in week 15 of the Yellow Vest protest, and the leader of the Yellow Vest protest movement has been sending out signals that on the second weekend in March, there's going to be something of significance that's going to happen. He's talking about these paramilitary forces that are working now for the Yellow Vests. I think there's something coming on the second week of March, and I think it's going to be very violent. And of course, for those of you watching Brexit, we have a couple people here on the channel that keep us updated. Mike, for one, and we have a couple other people as well. We appreciate that. We are watching this latest move, which they're trying to get a 3-month extension. A 3-month extension. We'll see. We had this big defection. We had a lot of things going on last week. Didn't get to it, but we're watching that closely as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See ya. Bye.